It's a video response to Texas Grabner. Good old Texas. So, I have another friend who lives in Texas. Actually, a couple of them. Anyway, that was a joke. For those who don't know, Tex Grabner lives in Illinois, and he's got a bit of a country way about him, and you'd be hard-pressed to find him without his camouflage cowboy hat on. He's an interesting fellow. In one of his latest videos, he has some oration taking place where he's 20 feet up in a tree stand, and he is waxing poetic about hunting and how he's a hunter and how he doesn't put corn on the ground because he doesn't bait, and he's a bit all over the map between managed game property and exotic hunting ranches. He has some very valid points. For starters, I'm going to start out by agreeing with him to a point. I heard a story, actually a guy in my hunting club. He went to a ranch and he was going after hog. Now down here in Florida, we're fairly famous for our hog, and we're also somewhat famous for the exotic way in which you can take that hog. Semi-automatic 308s at night with night vision. I mean, it can get pretty interesting. The reason why we're able to do that is because hog is a non-indigenous species, meaning it has no business being in Florida. The ecosystem was never made for the hog, and it's considered to be a domestic animal or a rodent. Okay, I know that may be difficult for some people to understand, but what has happened, people with the ability and the means have bought large tracts of land, and they have propagated and offered shooting of these animals for the sport of others. Most of the time down here it's hog, but there's a place not far from here that also has some exotics from Africa and things like that, where people would have the opportunity to hunt an animal that they would never get the opportunity to otherwise. Now, there's a big part of hunting for me is ethics. You want to make sure that you take the animal in a non-cruel way and in a necessary way. And one of the things about these non-indigenous exotics is you have, hogs included, you have the ability where it is permissible to, in some cases, take the animal in any way you choose, be it chucking a spear at them, shooting them with a higher capacity semi-automatic rifle. Really, it's pretty bizarre in some cases, but I don't know what else to say about it. There's guidelines and reasons for why we are allowed certain weapons to hunt natural game, such as in Florida, the Florida whitetail, or with Tex up in Illinois, his Illinois whitetail, which I believe, as far as modern gun, they aren't allowed anything more than a 12 gauge. Now, that I somewhat don't understand, other than it could be a range issue, like whoever makes those laws is concerned about how far a modern weapon can shoot. However, with rifles, shotgun barrels, and sabot slugs, I think I think they could probably do away with that law as well, or make a law against that as well, because some of these modern sabot slugs can bring a shotgun's range out well within 200 yards and in some cases beyond. But I digress. Now, anyway, back to the guy that's in my club. He has a very limited amount of time to hunt. He's the one person in our club that has a very limited amount of time to hunt. He he works as an insurance adjuster, and he'll work, and then he'll have a weekend. And he has to fit all of his hunting in within 3 days, and sometimes that's his whole hunting season will be 3 days. Now, the idea of some of these ranches is a person will spend a great amount of money because you got money or you got time, right? If you have the time, then you go into your property, the property that you're allowed to hunt. In Texas' case, he's very fortunate to be around quite a bit of farmland and have permission to hunt in an area where he can look and see where the deer are going. But now in my other friend's case, he's got 3 days that he gets to be in the woods all year long. So what'll happen is he may, he's part of the club this year, but he may go to a hunting ranch where for a fee, usually it's a pretty good amount, $1,500 or so. And oddly enough, whenever a person spends $1,500 to $2,000 at a ranch, they tend to be put on some animals. There'll either be a guide with them that's extremely good at hunting, or like what Tex says in his video, links down below, a bell will ring and they come out for food. And this brings me to that actual story. So my friend was up in his thing, and a hog comes by because he's on a particular ranch where they have hog, and boom, he shoots the animal. Now, I don't know. I know a lot of people have funny notions about food and life and death that may be watching this, but this is going to get graphic in a second. He shoots the neck out of the one deer, or not the one deer, he shoots the neck out of the hog. And the corn actually spills out of the hog's neck because it's eating at that time. 2 hogs are together. The one runs away. However, 2 seconds later, it comes back and starts eating the corn out of the other hog's neck while it's laying there dying. Now, in the wild, the animals tend to be a little bit more cautious. You know, your weapon goes off and they tend to, they beat feet. You know what I'm saying? So, obviously that would be a case of a ranch where those sort of practices are taking place. Now, again, the purpose in that is a person has 3 days to hunt. They're a professional person. They plunk down $1,500, in some cases $2,000, if not more, and they expect to get an animal for that money, or else they won't come back. So it puts us in a bit of a sticky spot. However, on the good side, it gives them the opportunity to a point to keep their marksmanship sharp. It'd be a bit of a justification to say that those animals live well on that property, being that they have plenty to eat and stuff like that. But personally, I'm not sure how to feel about it. There's another place down here by contrast. I think it's called Sabre Island. It may have a different name. Anyway, on this particular island, they have a non-indigenous breed of deer called a saber deer, which is a little bit larger than our usual Florida whitetail. Now they have a lottery draw, to see whether or not you can hunt on this particular property. And this island is a bit more wild. There are hogs and there are these saber deer, and they've got some interesting rules and guidelines that increase the sportsmanship and things like that. Now again, Tex is talking about quite a few things, but I don't think where he is at that it's actually legal to maintain a food plot or run feeders and stuff like it is for us down here. However, I think it's all too easy if whatever is illegal in your particular hunting zone. I think it's very easy if something's illegal in your hunting zone to justify why it's illegal, or to build up yourself in some sort of righteous indignation over, how could somebody maintain a food plot in the middle of all this land where they're able to manipulate and get the deer to come to their particular particular area and you shake your fist in righteousness and say, I am a hunter, and you are not. Which is the impression that I kind of get from text from time to time. Here's the thing. And I think it's similar to being in an area where in our particular zone at this particular time, it is legal to maintain a food source for deer or any other animal. It's legal to maintain a food source on your own property, so long as it is for the most of the year. It's over 6 months. You need to, before season opening, the way it works this year, first at least, it needs to be at least 6 months ahead of time that you provide that food source. It can't be like a last minute thing. So in the case of our particular hunting property, there are, I'm just guessing, but there's probably about 1,000 acres of corn growing within a quarter mile of our hunting property. 1,000 acres of corn growing. Well, that corn will be harvested, and what 1,000 acres has provided for is an increased population of deer. Now, around that 1,000 acres of corn, it's not quite like Texas environment where he's got woods right next to there and he gets to hide right next to the cornfield. It's 1,000 acres of corn, a highway, the city, and that's it. And they're in the city with the suburbs. I call it a city. It's not really a city, but then there's the suburbs. So you have 1,000 acres of corn, which has caused an increase in deer population, which will need to be reduced. Because again, we didn't do this, but there are less wildlands now than there used to be. And wild animals require wild lands to self-sustain themselves, to maintain themselves. And unfortunately, the population needs to be controlled because with only so many acres of wildlands can only support so many of these animals, and they'll end up starving to death or what have you. So you got 1,000 acres of corn being harvested that used to be able to support a population of deer who could sneak in there, get food, and have an awesome food source. Well, what happens when that gets harvested? They keep looking for food with this artificially expanded deer population. So by providing an alternative food source from that corn, in our case, we take those deer away from areas where they would be very much a nuisance, and in some cases dangerous as far as road hazards and things like that. And we have a plot, they have tracks, and there you have it. Also, too, the guidelines are followed in our particular area. We, in our case, and I'm not saying it's being ambitious of us, but we are limited to how many game we can take based on our zone, and we follow those guidelines. Now, would it be marvelous for us to have never built cities and improvements and things like that? Yes, absolutely. And two, though, the romantic hunter that Tex is may not have the same luck in his area if those large farmlands weren't growing there. So I don't know. Just hope that sheds a little bit of light on the alternatives of kind of an alternative point of view to what Tex is talking about here. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I don't know about enjoyed it, but shed you a little bit of light on from an area where the laws that we have and the guidelines that we follow are different than yours. If you want to see the sort of things that I'm working with, and if you go to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, I think I'm in Zone C. I'd have to look again, but you can look at those guidelines and see how Florida itself is split up in different areas. It's pretty interesting, and I know it may not seem it, but I think it's ethical and it's as uncruel as possible. So, all right, we'll see y'all later.